course, this is Nuance. I am Mike Scala, live from the War Room this week, joined by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop MC in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Not much. Looking at these results here, and got Google up and trying to see what the numbers are coming in. I guess this is kind of a live, like you said, live from the War Room situation,
Yeah, we got the whiteboard behind us. We can put up returns up there or whatever useful information we have to share with you.
So yeah, it might be a little bit different this time, but hopefully, we get some good interaction going on today. So, but in the meantime, when we all know that what's going on right now, the elections are happening nationwide, and but in the meantime, you've got something coming up.
Yes, and real quick on that last point, 9 o'clock is when the polls close in New York. So if you have not voted yet, please get out there and do so. You have a little under 2 hours to do it. It's very important that everyone gets out and votes. So take care of that. But yes, tomorrow morning, in fact, I'm leaving for Puerto Rico for the Somos El Futuro conference down there. My plane leaves at, I think, 9 o'clock in the morning. So it'll be an early morning for me.
What's the name of that conference?
Say it again, Jay.
What was the name of that conference?
Somos El Futuro. We are the future.
Okay.
It's an organization that supports Latinos in New York State, but it's a very big political conference taking place in Puerto Rico every year. But you have political folks, union heads, and all kinds of people involved in New York politics go down every year. So a lot of networking opportunities and such down there. But it's actually very important to do this year. And there was some talk about should it be canceled or what should happen with it because of the recent hurricane that went down. But the decision was made to go forward with it because it's actually very important for the Puerto Rican economy. And you have, I believe, about 1,500 people from New York going down there every year for this. So you think about the people who work at the hotels and the taxi drivers, everyone down there who really needs that support right now.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it could be a good economic bump.
Yeah, so real quick, Andre's with us. He has some results, I guess.
Yeah,
what's
so
up?
There are a couple of interesting things. So Florida statewide, the Senate race between Val Demings and Marco Rubio with 11% in. Val Demings is ahead with 54.6% of the vote.
So hold on, for those who didn't catch that, in Florida, Val Demings is currently leading Marco Rubio for the Senate race with 54%, but it's early. Only 11% has been counted.
She's leading him by 95,000 votes.
But she's up by 95,000 votes so far.
With 8% in, we do have some numbers from Georgia as well.
Okay, here comes some Georgia numbers.
Raphael Warnock is up by 150,000 votes with 8% in, with 71.2% to Herschel Walker's 27.5%. With ticket splitting, Libertarian Chase Oliver at 1.3.
So in Georgia, Warnock is ahead. But again, this is still very early, of course. It's just interesting that this is the first result that we're seeing. But keep in mind that
8% in, and 150,000.
150,000 votes between them. So that's a big number. But keep in mind, early vote was factored into this, right?
Now, these numbers are a little bit different from what I'm seeing from the Associated Press.
Okay, Jay has different numbers from the AP, apparently.
Yeah, it looks like there's about 350,000 votes in that Georgia race, and Warnock is up 70.6%.
That's the early. I think you're only looking at the early vote totals. I think Andre's were more recent because
I'm watching this live.
He's watching it live on TV.
Okay, because
I saw that figure, Jay, myself earlier. That was, I think, just the early vote that was open first.
Okay, well, this is supposed to be live. It says live, but
I'm sure it'll refresh momentarily.
Right.
Now we have one seat, and the Republicans have one seat. It's 37 to 30
in terms of the Senate.
Well, it looks like either numbers. It looks like Herschel Walker is getting blown out so far. Hopefully, this continues.
Right, but it's also interesting to look at how much the early vote favored the Democrats, just in terms of Democrats really utilize, it seems, the early vote a lot more than Republicans do.
Right. It could be. I wonder if that's because of that distrust and thinking that, oh, well, this is some sort of a scam, or this is some sort of.
Yeah, it's a philosophical notion as well. Just, if you have a more conservative mind, you probably want to do things the old-fashioned way often, right? It's not always going to be the case, but I think that's just kind of that type of person, right? Like, we vote on election day, which is a conservative, traditional thing.
Right.
But yeah, there's certainly a lot of fear out there about not just early voting, but absentee voting. What is that?
So never mind on that Florida.
Never mind on Florida. So Rubio flipped the script.
Rubio flipped the script. Yes, 22% of the vote is in, 50.2% to Rubio, 48.9% to Demings.
So there you go. So Rubio
Right.
now was ahead in Florida. So yeah, these numbers are going to fluctuate as time goes on. And as I was saying, I think when you look at the big lead that you see Democrats have early, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the early vote was factored into it. We have to
Right.
wait to see all the votes come in.
And the same page of Google is showing that exact same percentage on here.
Okay.
So I wonder what we got here on.
So if you have any races called, I guess we'll add them to the board. Any major races get called, I'll put them down.
So the ones this year, I think, we're definitely looking for New York. Florida's an issue. Texas is an issue. But hopefully Oz doesn't get in.
It's gonna be one to watch for sure.
Yeah.
New York also. Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting.
So you've got
People are in such bubbles nowadays that it seems like both sides are convinced that they're winning, and there's gonna be a lot of heartbreak either way.
right. Yeah.
Kentucky got, I mean, that's not really a major race, but Kentucky got called for Rand Paul. Not too surprising there.
It's surprising that they keep getting voted in over and over and over again over decades. Even though, people just aren't even that happy with members of Congress in general. It's like, why keep voting the same people in?
Right. No, but it's also interesting when you look at the differences between primaries and general elections. And there's been a lot of talk lately about should we even have primaries, and a lot of other countries don't. It's just that one election. But
Right.
a primary is really a chance to exercise that opinion. I mean, when you get to a general election, you have your candidates who represent different parties and oftentimes very different ideologies and approaches. And so you might say this candidate, this person has been in the seat or even been nominated by this party for too long, but you might still vote for them if they represent your values over the other person. In a primary, maybe you have candidates, I mean, at least in theory, right? You would have candidates who would be more aligned ideologically. And so some of these other factors might weigh more.
Right. And I think people forget, because these primaries are such big news and are covered so much, they forget that they're essentially internal elections. So to say like we should get rid of primaries, I think that needs to be taken into account,
Sure, absolutely. But the argument is in other countries, you still do have the choice between the parties, and they're really saying it's more internal. The determination as to who the nominee is going to be, that's super internal there, right? Because their party leadership decides, as opposed to all of the voters in the party.
I think that, to me, that opens it up to even more like cronyism and whatnot. If the party leaders are going to make their decision, like,
right, well,
you have to toe the line.
That's why it was changed in the first place. I mean, we never even directly elected U.S. senators, right? And so an amendment to the Constitution was passed to do that. Even when you look at nominating candidates for president, the primaries were not where they used to be. That used to be decided. I mean, now there's all this controversy of super delegates and party bosses having too much influence in the primary system. But that's how it was exclusively prior to McGovern in 72.
And I think, we have problems with it, our system, but I think it's a fair way to do it with the primaries, in my opinion, to give anyone a shot to go out there. If you can go out there and campaign and make your case, you have a shot to get on there. I don't think it should be the party leadership that decides, okay, this is who's going to be, in the mix.
Should that always be the case? I mean, it's interesting, like in New York right now, you have different laws depending on the type of seat that it is. The city seat, for example, if someone leaves office in the middle of their term, there's often a nonpartisan special election. I mean, they could either decide to hold it till the next regularly scheduled election, or if it's going to be too much time, what they'll do is they'll say, we're going to have a special election to fill out the remainder of the person's term who just left, but it's a nonpartisan one. So that creates, I mean, obviously there are pros and cons, but it creates a whole framework where people will create their own party lines and everyone's kind of all in the same pool together. And you have some interesting vote splitting scenarios that happen sometimes. And we saw that in our district here in South Queens back in 2009. It is the thing that happens, but it's one way to do it. At the state level, when someone leaves in the middle of their term, there's a special election. But in that case, it's actually very partisan because there's no primary and it's not nonpartisan. It's Democratic versus Republican, but the party leaders, and really it's the county committees, but essentially it's the party apparatus decides who is going to be the nominee of each party. So they really do have a tight control over that type situation. And you know, both scenarios happen in New York City, right? But if it's a state level seat, it's a whole different law, whole different framework than if it's a city level seat.
Right. Yeah, and I think if it was that type of scenario where the party leaders are the ones making that decision on the candidate solely, I think a lot more people would lose faith in voting in that participation, because then it'd be even more like, yeah, it doesn't matter what we do. Like, so I think it would be a
right. Well, especially if you look at districts, and again, New York City has a lot of this where it's so overwhelmingly partisan, right? Like most districts in New York City are going to be so Democratic, and then you have areas that are so Republican. There are very few swing districts. And so if all you can vote on is a general election, I do think people would feel that same frustration, right? It's like, yeah,
Right.
we technically have a vote, but what does it mean? The result is a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
You know, but on the flip side, they have long said that about New York being a blue state, and here we are with a competitive gubernatorial race. So nothing should be taken for granted.
So I imagine this is going to be all of this is going to be a major topic of discussion on this Puerto Rico trip that you're going on.
Right, and I think that a lot of the discussions that are had in Puerto Rico are going to be very based on the results that we see tonight. I mean, you can have completely different tones and completely different discussions based on the results. But
Right.
I guess either way, the message should be people need to be fired up. I mean, whether we win or we lose, whether our preferred candidates win or lose, I think that we still need to have that same energy and say, listen, we shouldn't keep a defeatist attitude if we lose. And if we win, we shouldn't put our feet up and say that we're all good. Either way, the fight has to continue.
Right.
And I just say that
Andre wants to, by the way, when Andre speaks, can you hear him? I'm not sure.
I can hear him. It's faint, but I can hear him. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say that I will feel incredibly defeated if in the California 47, Katie Porter loses. That's going to be my one race to watch.
That was very specific. Okay. That was there as a reason, just because you like her, or is that?
Katie Porter is quite literally the most competent public
I understand.
servant in office today across every single seat in like literally.
So he's big for
in
Katie
office.
Porter. No, I was just wondering if there was some kind of electoral trend that, you know, that would predict. But it's just, you just like her. That's why you're focusing on
No,
the race.
because the thing is this, she is quite literally the most competent person in office. The fact that her race is too close to call is fucking crazy.
Well, that's also an interesting idea, right? This idea of her being a competent public servant. But are people even voting on that, even in a primary these days? I mean, does that even cross people's minds? And it's funny because you see all this polling.
The most competent, right?
You see all this polling out there about, you know, what issues are important to you and everyone. And by the way, we'll get into our poll results as well. But no one even seems to really talk about that. Like, who's most qualified? Who would do the best job? I mean, and I guess you kind of get really wonky when you start talking about like who's got the best relationships. And no one really knows that outside of people who are in it. But you would think there'll be some more consideration as to who is qualified to do this job and what does this job entail. I mean, the qualifications for a legislator should be different than those for an executive, right?
Yeah, but then who's going to decide those qualifications?
The voter should.
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you're talking in that regard, yeah. And that would be, you know, how the candidate campaigns and what they put out there, and the voters should look at that and be like, okay, well, this person is talking about this, they have this experience, I think they can do this.
Right.
Absolutely. Instead of just saying, well, this person has this check mark by their name, I'm going to go here. You know, it's.
But yeah, I mean, but do people even look at that enough?
No, I think a lot of people vote along party lines a lot of times.
Even in the primary, let's say, forget party lines. Let's say you're in the same party. You're looking at a list of candidates. Do people look at qualifications as much as they should?
Probably not. I would think.
I don't think so.
People are listening to whatever they hear, and to some degree, I think that's also a a good litmus test to some degree. You want to hear what they're saying, but you also got to listen through what they're saying, not just take whatever's being said for surface value, because they could just be blowing sunshine up your butt.
Sorry, apparently there's a dog here who's causing trouble. Don't mind that.
Doesn't like the results.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, when I first started getting deep into New York City politics, I was a little surprised at the approach I saw most people taking to it, especially when it came to primaries. I kind of assumed that people would be looking at all the candidates' platforms and their backgrounds and their history and kind of looking at each candidate and figuring which one is the best suited for this job. And I saw a lot less of that than I expected. A lot of it was cliquey or popularity contest based. Like it felt more like a high school student election than a serious political election.
Yeah, I wonder how many people actually look into that, like
especially at the local level.
Due diligence, so to speak, or that research on candidates before they go in to vote. The local level, I guess you probably get it more at the national level on the presidential race, maybe, but on the local level and whatnot,
right. People... And honestly, I mean, I'm someone who's like, super into it, and I can't say that I know who everyone is who's running in all of these races. I mean, sometimes there's just too many, and you might get like a hyper local race, and then you have races, for example, like judge, who you're not going to know everything about where they stand because there are certain rules prohibiting them from speaking on that. So even if you were to attend all the judge forums in your area, they're there talking about their family. I'm the second of 9 siblings. Look at me, but they're not saying anything about how they would rule on the bench because they're not supposed to. But so as a voter, you really don't have much information, and then that just kind of encourages you to vote based on what? Their name, or did they seem like a nice person when you saw them at the meeting? I mean, what are you really basing your decision on?
Right. I think in cases like that, people would have to try to look at some kind of a public record. I mean, if there is even that information out there, I mean,
what you could do is you could look at the history as a lawyer, and sometimes you do get like the bar associations weighing in and saying, we think this person is qualified, we give this person a stamp of approval. Look at all that. But I'm just saying that for a lot of these races, there's just so little information out there, even if you wanted to find it all.
Right.
How would you?
Right. Exactly. And I wrote a blog piece several years back about something similar, like people trying to get this information, because some of these local races just aren't covered as much, so there won't be that much information out there. You never know, and there are ways people can do things like set Google alerts to under the candidate's name to get all the information that comes across. Any articles that come across automatically comes to them so that they can do some kind of research on that. And of course, go to people's websites, look at their social media, look into whatever points they're talking about, that type of thing. But I mean, on these small races, you're right. It's going to be, there's a little bit more research that's necessary.
Right. And maybe more groups should endeavor to put that information out to the people.
Yeah.
I would like to see that.
Okay.
Maybe
an organization a group that collects that information on the local candidates and puts up like this info sheet.
Right.
Per candidate.
Right. Yeah. Or even like, what would be interesting? Because you see this in the big races, certainly for president, maybe even for the governor's races. You see these sites where you can go on and they ask you a series of questions about your positions, and then they tell you how much you align with the different candidates. Like 66% Kathy Hochul or whatever. That would be interesting to see at the local level. Maybe someone could put something like that together.
Right. I think with that would be good. I think also would be beneficial is to have that data that they're using to make those comparisons. Because to make that algorithm, that test, they have to have the certain points that that candidate believes in. And I think people should also be able to see those certain points so they can read it for themselves as well.
And there are websites like that, even Ballotpedia, for example. You would be surprised.
Right, Ballotpedia is a pretty
questionnaires. They send candidates, and there's a lot of public information. If you do dig for it, sometimes you can't find things like that.
There is a weird conversation going on in the chat.
What's up in the chat? So I see Lixa, I see Paul Truss. What's going on, Paul? I see James.
I don't know. They're saying that Mike Scala likes scallops and scallions. Like
Mike Scala likes scallops and scallions. Who said that? I see Joe. I see Melissa. I see Mike. I don't even see this.
What are they talking about here?
Who said that?
Jeremy Bukhara said
Jeremy,
Mike Scala
Jeremy,
likes-
this is like a tongue twister.
I guess.
Like scallops and scallions.
I guess we could say like bars.
Bars. Yeah, hashtag bars.
Wow.
Okay, James in the chat says, my mom thought that thing in Puerto Rico was a vacation last year when Mayor Adams went. A lot of people treat it like a vacation, but what's interesting is they said that there wouldn't be any parties this year. We'll see if that's true, but apparently they're trying to take a more solemn approach because people are still recovering. So it's going to be focused more on public service this year, but you know, people, they're in Puerto Rico, they're from New York, they want to have fun, they want to make the most of it. So we'll see, but I do like the idea of treating it more solemnly, saying, look, we're here to do the conference goes on, politics goes, everything goes on, but we don't need to be so festive because that can be distasteful. And you know, if we're in public service to begin with, why not use this as a time to further that and help the people on the island?
That would be interesting if those 1,500 people went down there and they did community service while they were down there. Because even though it can be an economic boom, I would wonder, you know, I don't know what the state is of their, you know, infrastructure at the moment and if they've fully recovered, but could that sudden influx of 1,500 people be a burden on the fragile systems that's in place right now that the people are relying on?
Well,
could it be a double-edged sword?
I do think that the San Juan area, which you went, since it's Carolina, which is close to San Juan, I do think that that area is better off than the rest of the island. So I mean, I don't think that they're incapable of handling it. I do think that it's actually a positive boon to their local economy, but it's also something to be sensitive of, right? You're putting that money there for a short period. Can they accommodate it? And you know, I think the people who are coming need to be mindful of that as well.
Right, because it could be, you know, while we know, like, yeah, it could be an economic boon, but if they're over there partying and they came down from New York and they're over there partying, there could be some residents that are being like, yeah, look at these people coming down with money and we're trying over here suffering and they're, you know, tipping up champagne and whatever. Like there could be some kind of feeling.
It reminds me of, if you saw.
Are you guys aware that about like 200 different Puerto Ricans leave the island per day to try to get back to the mainland United States because of just how shitty we treat the territory?
Oh, sure. He's talking a lot of Puerto Ricans leave the island every day to try to get to the mainland U.S. It reminded me of, if you ever saw Ozark, they were actually talking, they had a whole episode about Illmatic, basically. And Killer Mike, did you see it? Killer Mike was on there, and he was talking about, if you listen to Illmatic, there's a certain cruelty of him describing his experience, Nas, of course, in Queensbridge projects growing up, which is really right next to Manhattan. It's right over the river from Manhattan. You could see Manhattan, like the skyline clearly. So it's like that juxtaposition of him growing up in the projects in Queens, like really right in the shadow of Manhattan, where all of that money and all that financial activity is, you know, and it just kind of reminded me of that, like, coming into Puerto Rico while everyone is suffering, partying, almost like dancing on their grave, so to speak. Not to get too solemn, but that's, you know, that's kind of how it could feel if not done right. But I think there is a positive opportunity there, like I said, to come down and provide public service. Yeah, there should be volunteer opportunities. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of that down there, and that should be encouraged.
Absolutely. Now you had mentioned before we got on here about you're leaving in the morning, but you don't have your packing situation taken care of.
No, actually, I went shopping for clothes yesterday, so I don't think I'm too bad when it comes to packing, because all I'm going to do is basically take the clothes I bought out of the shopping bag and put them in a overnight bag, like a duffel bag or whatever. So I don't think that's too bad. But some people pack like a month in advance or weeks in advance for a trip. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I'm the same with you. I'm packing the night before. I'm packing, you know, and actually I usually leave it so late that I end up getting less sleep than I had planned on, because, you know, I end up packing before that. Yeah,
absolutely. And also when it comes to the itinerary of the trip, to me, the whole fun is to be spontaneous. But I know a lot of people want to have a whole agenda set well in advance. And they're like, we're going to wake up at 9:47 and we're going to get down to breakfast and we're going to have pineapple juice at 10:01 and then we're going to get on it. Like, I can't do that. I'm just like, let's just go there and see what's up.
Yeah, I think we both travel similarly in that regard.
Yeah. I remember at Black Caucus weekend last year, I was with my boy, Joe. He came up and he's kind of from outside the political world, but he was interested in kind of learning more about it. And he was asking me like, okay, so we're staying at this place in Albany, and then tomorrow, like what time do we got to get up and go to the things, and what events are we hitting up? I'm like, dude, I don't know. Andre's going to call us and tell us where to go. Like I'm not, I'm not planning all this ahead of time.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that's. I wonder if could that be? I know guys tend to leave it to the last minute, at least in my experience. And pack lighter. Because you mentioned like you're just gonna grab a duffel bag and throw some stuff in it, and it's a weekend, or I don't know how long you're gonna be down there, but
yeah, I think I'm coming back on Saturday, but a few days.
Yeah, and it's like you don't need to bring your whole house with you.
Right.
Give me a bag and toss some stuff in there.
Right, and that's the thing I don't understand, and maybe you hit on it there, but I don't understand why people say you have to pack so far in advance. Is it just my theory has always been it was the excitement of it. Like people are packing because they figure like once they start packing, like they've got one foot out the door. It's almost like that's when their vacation starts, so they can't wait to get it going.
Right.
Maybe that's how I always thought of it. Like it was like an excitement thing, like an anticipation. Because from a practical matter, I don't understand why you would need to. So
right. And even for international flights, when I go back to the States and I spend like several weeks there, I don't put that much thought into packing. I just
Honestly, it's crazy because I knew I was going to Puerto Rico. I barely even thought about the trip until like yesterday, and I was like, oh, I should get some clothes for this.
Right. Absolutely. So, but that's interesting. It looks like here, I'm looking on these Google results, Stacy Abrams was far ahead, but Kemp is catching up. She was at 56.2 right now, 43.4 for Kemp. So that's
Jeremy Bucari says a lot of people don't know the job description of each office, which is very true. James says the judges on my ballot were under both the Democratic ticket and the Republican ticket. I don't know why. Yeah, a lot of people have been complaining about that as well, but that often happens in these elections that both parties will endorse the same candidate. And generally in New York, they've got something called Wilson Pakula, which is a way that candidates can run under multiple party lines. So if you want to run for office in general in New York, you're allowed to petition to get on the primary line of the party that you're enrolled in without someone saying that, hey, you can't be on this line. The party bosses can't kick you off. Like, they can try to challenge your petitions, of course, but by virtue of you being a member of the party, it kind of gives you that right to try to get on that party line. But if you want to get on the line of a different party, either as a third party, or even sometimes like you see in this case, someone might run as a Democrat and a Republican, which sounds crazy. You need the permission because you can only enroll in one party. So to run on another party, you need the permission of the party leaders of that other party. And they call that Wilson Pakula based on the law. It's actually based on the sponsors of the law. So that's how it works in New York. And then you can run on multiple party lines, and then all of your votes from different lines get added up together, which is called fusion voting, to determine a winner. But you often do see, in the case of judges, someone running as a Democrat and Republican because it's not a competitive race. And so they're just endorsed by both parties.
Yeah, and I kind of have an issue with the fact with judges even being party affiliated. Right? Like that's kind of against what a judge is supposed to be. There shouldn't be a Democratic judge or a Republican judge. If you're a judge, you're supposed to be impartial and not supposed to be aligning one way or the other. They're supposed, to the fact that you have a Democratic candidate and a Republican candidate means that they're not going to be impartial. That's kind of an issue to me.
Right. But that's also, I guess, why, obviously there are multiple reasons why people do it, but when someone runs as a judge on both lines, I think they're trying to send that signal that right. Not being partisan, they're the judge for everyone. But of course, they're unopposed, which is a whole other issue.
Right. Like it shouldn't be. Yeah, I don't know. That's it shouldn't be a certain party. There shouldn't be lines for that on the ballot for judges.
But then how would people vote?
Well, you just vote for the candidates running.
You have no information about them. They're not allowed to say what their
judges should be nominated.
Leanings are.
Judges should be nominated.
Andre in the chat, Andre in the in-person chat says judges should be nominated by the parties.
I don't think they should be affiliated with the parties at all. That to me is a conflict of interest. I think if it's a campaign spot, then the judges are going to have to put their record out there. They're going to have to put their info out there to something that people can look at to vote on. Because otherwise you're just saying, if we're attacking the party line, then they're just voting as, oh, well, this is a Democrat, so I'm going to vote for this Democrat judge. This is a Republican, I'm going to vote for Republican.
No,
and they're still not using any basis to vote for them.
We should literally have the governor nominate judges for any state courts. And
Okay.
The mayor nominate for any city.
Okay. So Andre is clarifying his position. He says that there should be no voting on judges at all. They should just be nominated by their parties. So for state courts, the governor should nominate for a city court. There's really no city court though, Andre.
Well, I mean,
So like traffic court maybe, or like something local.
Night court.
Night court?
The old TV show.
Within the borough. So Andre's come up with a whole new system for bringing judges to the bench now. But you have the state Supreme Court in Queens, for example, in each of the boroughs. So it's still a state court, but it's for that county. It's for the county.
I'm aware. So
Yeah.
maybe how's this? For any metropolitan cities, the mayors of those cities get to nominate a judge, and then the governor gets to nominate an alternative or the same judge, and then like the city or the state legislature gets to vote.
I have a headache now.
No, I think, but then you'd have a Trump stocking the Supreme Court type of situation. Because
You already
whoever-
know the way that things are set up.
Yeah, so like that's isn't that the point, to try to figure a way out of that? I think we should all put them in a UFC
So federal
ring.
judges are appointed, right? But these state judges get elected.
I think we
It's
should put them
supposed
in
to be a balance.
a UFC ring, and whoever makes it out is the judge for that
That could
district.
be our poll question. Should judges be elected, or should judges run on partisan lines, party lines, or be nonpartisan? What do you think?
Something like that. Should judges be affiliated with political parties? Jeremy in the chat agrees judges should be impartial to politics and focus on justice and term limits.
Well, and you know what? And you're right in this regard. The judicial branch of government is supposed to be a check on the other branches. So yeah, it is supposed to be above the fray in that sense, right? Like, for example, if there is a contested election, but if you have someone challenging the results, or a runoff, or too close to call, recounts, and you need judges to oversee that, do you want them to be politically affiliated? I mean, they're supposed to be neutral in that sense, right?
Right.
And they're supposed to rule not based on their politics, but based on the rule of law. Although we see that obviously,
Right.
number one, they're intrinsically interconnected often, and number two, even to the extent that they're not, people do rule, it seems, based on their political leanings, especially at high levels.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeremy in the chat, they're supposed to be impartial of politics.
Yeah, well, that is true.
So, yeah.
So why don't you give a crack at the poll question? Wait, who? Someone went Ohio? Tim Ryan?
No. Tim Ryan is ahead.
Tim Ryan is ahead in Ohio. Yeah, he was favored in that race too.
He was not. J.D. Vance was favored in that race.
I saw a poll showing Tim Ryan ahead recently.
Let's get it on.
Let's hope.
Okay. So if there's a result, again, I've got this board. If there's a result to put on here, we're going to put a result on the board. Otherwise, I'll just draw a turkey and we'll talk about the turkey trot.
Right. So, okay, so let's do it the poll.
Yeah, so Jay, why don't you take a crack at it?
Okay, well, how about this? So the poll for this week is: should judges be affiliated with political parties? How's that one?
Okay. It's funny, right? Because I think the answer is no when you frame it that way. Should they? No, but we have to do something. I mean, we have a system. It's not going to be perfect no matter what we do.
Absolutely, right.
And like I said, it's funny because now a lot of people are complaining, going back to James's comment in the chat, people are complaining that when they go to vote, the judges on the ballot are the same. It almost looks like the fix is in, right? Like whether I vote Democrat or Republican, I have to vote for the same person. So people want a choice, but then when you give them that choice, it kind of gets back to your concern about them just being overtly partisan.
Right. And, should there, I don't know if there is, but should there be some sort of a review board that reviews judges' decisions to make sure that they're not partisan? I mean, we saw what happened. What was it in I think it was in Connecticut, when that judge had sent all those kids to prison because he was filling a contract role. And no one, of course, no one was looking over his stuff, and he went to jail for it after he got caught.
Here's the problem, Jay. The law itself and the way people look at it, especially when you start talking about constitutional rights and freedoms, has become very politicized.
Yeah.
And so it's easy now if someone, let's say, is big on a Second Amendment to say, oh, well, they're just a Republican hack. But what if they're just very pro Second Amendment? Or it can go the other way too. But first, any rights, abortion rights, whatever it is. It's people are just so political on everything now that even something that should be above politics gets politicized to the point where any decision a judge is making, even if it wasn't coming from a political place, in their heart, could be read that way just based on a political climate.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So yeah.
All right, you asked the poll question. We can look at the poll results from last week. Actually, there's two results to go over because I had a poll, I guess, that we put out there 2 weeks ago that I just carried over on my social media. So I can talk about that as well as this most recent one. So we'll start, I guess, with the first one that we put out, which was about banning people who committed assaults from riding the subway. That was something proposed by the MTA. And as we mentioned, that there is a law that says, which hasn't ever been enforced, but there is something that would allow them to ban people who have committed an assault on a subway worker. But there isn't something currently that would allow them to ban people who committed assaults on riders. And obviously people are very concerned about violence in the system. And so this was something that was put forward as an idea. And so we asked that question, did you agree that people should be banned from riding the subway if they've committed an assault on a rider? My results, and this was between Instagram and Facebook, it was 80% yes, 20% no. But the main question I got, which was what we had brought up, was how would you enforce that?
Right. Yeah. And I think that would be difficult. It would just kind of be symbolic in a way. Or just like if you got caught, there'd be extra penalties for it. You can't.
I think that's really the best you can do. You can say, listen, you're not allowed to be by the subway, and if we catch you, it's going to be really bad on you next time. Because now you're not only going to be convicted of whatever additional crime you committed, but there's also you violating, you're not allowed to be here.
Is that forever though?
It's not a rule yet.
No, it is. There is a rule. Well, not for everyone, but for if you attack
a subway worker. But Andre is asking, will it be forever?
Right.
Will it be a permanent ban? I wouldn't think it would be permanent.
But it looks like the one, if you attack subway workers, they can ban you for a max of 3 years.
3 years.
And so the MTA wants to apply that to everyone for any fight.
That makes sense. If you have that rule already for workers, number one, enforce it because it hasn't been enforced.
Right.
Number two, extend it to riders. But yeah, you don't want to create a system where people are checking IDs every time you go down the subway. So it's hard to really enforce it. But like you said, I think the best you could probably do is worsen the penalties.
Actually, yeah, the way to enforce it, right, is because mandatory New York State cards and stuff, right? New York State IDs and shit, and you just make.
But you don't want people to have to show their ID to get on the subway,
No,
do you?
I'm saying, but you tie the mesh card to the ID, like you literally make the ID a mesh card.
He wants to tie the ID to a Metro card. I think that might be getting too invasive, isn't it?
Probably.
Yeah, and then what do you do for people who just hop on for one ride? They don't buy Metro cards, then like.
Right. By the way, the Metro card is being phased out, but it is being replaced.
Now, if you want to go really, 1984, you could have like facial recognition.
Yeah, that's
every
crazy.
subway stop, and then
fingerprints.
Yeah.
Let's not go too crazy.
Yeah, let's not do that. But I think
I agree with the premise behind it and the intention behind it, which is we need to do something to be addressing crime, especially in the subway system. And if you have demonstrated yourself to be someone who's going to commit violence on people in the system, you probably shouldn't be allowed to be in a system and to terrorize other people.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And I think it needs to be judged fairly if it does go into effect, because if someone's defending themselves, I don't think they should be subject to the ban. I think it should be whoever is the instigator and whoever starts.
Right, but again, going back to judges and courts, I mean, this would be based on convictions. Now, of course, we're going to talk about there are issues of false convictions and unfair trials, all that kind of stuff, but that is the system we have. I mean, we can't put like another layer of review on top of that, right?
Well, no, yeah, it will go to courts. I'm just saying how when the courts make their decision, it shouldn't just be like this zero tolerance, any altercation.
It's not though. It will be someone who commits an assault. So it will be attached to a conviction.
Yeah.
For assault, not self-defense.
Yeah. Well, as long as that's done, I think it's a possibility. Oh, Alexa said she had an ID tied to her Metro card. Yeah, I don't think everyone carries Metro
Not
cards.
everyone has it though. You can just buy a Metro card or a subway ride without ID.
So you said that's right. Metro cards are being phased out. What is going to be?
James in the chat, I know he posted about having issues with. I think he even tweeted the MTA about it. He knows all about it.
Yeah, because I remember that was news not too long back about phasing out the cards, and I don't remember what the alternative system was going to be. So on your poll results, you said what, 80%, 70%?
Yes, 80%. Yes, 20% no, but that was between Instagram and Facebook. Believe it or not, well, I guess it makes sense. On Facebook, people were a little bit more supportive of it than on Instagram.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, we got a lot of views on that on YouTube. There was over 2,000, over 2,400 views, I think it was on Instagram. But the response was just like a no and a duh. But duh doesn't really say. You mean duh that they should or duh that they shouldn't be? Like, what's your?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that means yes, but yeah, I mean, it would be helpful if people gave their thoughts a little better than that.
Yeah, it would be very helpful. So you had another poll.
Yes, and that's interesting because we asked what was people's most important issue when they went to vote today.
Right. And
look at this. I was going to pull it up. It was so convenient for me, and now it's not so convenient because the story just expired, and so I'm going to have to go into my archive now to get it.
Right.
But this was what we asked 4 choices, and we based it on the top 4 issues that voters gave pollsters in New York. So this wasn't arbitrary. We didn't just make up these choices, because I did get some questions like, why are those the choices? These were actually the top 4 issues that voters said mattered to them.
Right. And the question, just to refresh people's memory, was which issue is most important to you? The economy, threats to democracy, crime, or abortion access?
Yes. Okay, so here is my result on Instagram. Just have a second go. Look at this. All my archive stuff is coming up. Here we go. Economy, 33%. Threats to democracy, 8%. Crime, 50%. Abortion, 9%.
Interesting.
So crime and the economy by far were the top 2 issues. Democracy and abortion combined for 17%.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, and I think crime and economy are there going to be some ties there as far as effects. If the economy is down and people are hurting, people are going to be probably more apt to, a crime is probably going to rise a bit. If things are good, crime, I would imagine, goes down a bit. So
people don't make that connection as much as they should. I think people tend, and it's not people's fault, it's the way it's presented by the media mainly, that all these issues are kind of looked at as their own individual topics, when crime and the economy are very highly related, especially long run, right? Start looking at long-term economic trends and compare it with crime rates, and not just in a city, but nationwide, worldwide even.
Same thing with abortion.
Audrey made the point, same thing with abortion. Yes, that's true as well.
There have been numerous studies tying abortion access to influx of violent crime.
Abortion access is tied to an influx of violent crime. Abortion access, you mean, or rates?
Lack of abortion.
Lack of access, yes.
Lack of access.
Violent crime?
The violent crime, correct.
Well, I think because the resources are scarce in those areas.
Resources are scarce, so poor people
Right.
tend to have more kids.
Right.
If they don't have access to.
Poor people tend to have more kids, they don't have access to abortion services, and they don't have the resources to take care of them. They tend to be neglected, and it kind of feeds that cycle.
I could kind of see that.
I think it's also just
No, but hold on a second. So Tim, these are like worldwide studies that have been done. This is a
right, but there's also a question of correlation and causation there.
Right. That's. I mean, this is my first time hearing it, so I'd have to,
No, but what I'm saying is resources are scarce, in neglected areas. So of course you're going to have all of these problems in areas that are neglected, right? That just makes sense.
Yeah. Now I think, and I've had a few conversations this past week with, and so it's not really as far as abortion access not being so high in the poll results there, even though of course it's not a scientific poll, whatever.
Yeah. That's a good point. So I want to make that point that this is not a scientific poll. It's just our poll that we did on our stories. But I will say that these polls that we do are pretty representative of people. I mean, at least people in, I guess, our part of New York, but it's not like all conservatives or all progressives or all men or all women. It's a pretty diverse sample that we usually get.
Right. And I think, with those 2 points that came out on top, I do think that the Democrats seem to be putting much more of a focus on abortion access. And I don't think it's going to be that catalyst that they think it is.
I think also,
I think that's unfortunate.
Andre says that's unfortunate. Well, yeah, I agree with that. But I think also that the moment has passed, unfortunately, and maybe that speaks to attention spans nowadays in the 24/7 news cycle. But people seem like they're beyond that, sadly, which we're not, and it's still a very important issue. But people want to know what the news of the day is, and it seems like that dominated the news a few months back. And then it went on to other topics, crime.
Yeah. Like if that would have happened like this past week, then yeah, they would have been flooded. Yeah, they would have been flooded at the polls. But I don't think now, I don't think it's the leading point that Democrats are trying to bet some of the races on to bring people out to the polls.
You need more than that. You do have to focus on that because it's an important issue and that should not be neglected. And if you have candidates out there who are against reproductive rights, that's a very valid concern and they should not be supported. So I would never say that should be ignored or,
Oh, no.
But you need to do more than that. You can't base an entire campaign on that when people's concerns are very varied. There's a lot going on in the world right now. There's inflation, there is crime, there's all this stuff happening. And yeah, why can't we walk and chew gum at the same time? I mean, to be a good candidate, I think you should be addressing all these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. If people though are putting the economy and crime in the forefront, I think the Democrats do need to address that a little bit more.
Everyone does, right? All candidates need to.
Yeah. So we'll see how it plays out.
But Jay, it's like I said last week. You need candidates with actual plans beyond the rhetoric, because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm looking at these polls. Look at this economy, crime. That's what everyone's talking about, and base your whole campaign on I'm good for the economy, I'm good for crime. Right. They're not. I mean, it's easy to do that, but that's not a plan. Like you need someone who's going to articulate what they want to do. I want to hear solutions.
Right. Absolutely. And see, I think we've had that discussion too, like where I think Democrats try to do that more than Republicans these days. Republicans are more like just the flash in their point, whereas there needs to be some substance behind it. Like you said, there's got to be a plan. You've got to have, what are you going to do? How is this going to affect people?
But clarify that point again. So Republicans do what now?
It seems they're more interested, at least in campaigning. It's not as much substance in what they're saying. It's more about, like you said, I'm for the economy. I'm going to do better for the economy. Well,
a lot of it also is the culture war, which I guess is your point broadly, right? Like it is rhetoric, but it's trying to scare people about things that aren't really consequential because there's not a lot of substance behind it.
Right. Give me some. If you're better for it, then how are you better? What is it that you're doing that's going to be better? And what's proven about it? Not that, you've said this, but let's look at, what's the background of it? How is that better? Explain that to voters.
So don't you see that happening on both sides? I mean, not to be a both sides guy, but do you see, I'm not seeing a lot of substance in general, at least not being articulated on the campaign trail the way I would like it.
Not the way I would like it, but I've heard, like, even for example, in the Hochul Zeldin debate, even though I feel that he won the impression debate of it, she did try to give a little bit more substance to what she was talking. She was just boring when she was talking about it, and she just wasn't very compelling. But she did try to give a little bit more to it than what he was saying, like, oh yeah, well, they're just going to do this. We're going to be better for it. Like, I think there is a little bit more of that attempt on the Democrat side, than on the Republican side in general.
Right, yeah, and I think historically that's been the case where Democrats even get criticized sometimes for
Right.
being too wonky, right? Like too professorial or too technical.
Right.
You know, like you're boring us with all these details. Like that's not, you know, people want the sizzle. So you kind of have to put that package together, right? Have that substance, but be able to convey it in a way that appeals to people.
Right. And I don't know if you remember, I sent you that clip of Obama speaking recently, and he had fire in it. It's like, and it was kind of coming off of the discussion that we had recently had about why aren't Democrats giving a little bit more passion, so to speak. And I don't remember the exact clip what he was talking about, but he outlaid a bunch of stuff like, this is what's happened by Democrats. We've done this or whatever. And there was fire and there's passion, and you could see it in his face. He was really into it. It was a short clip. I'll have to find it again.
Well, polls are about to close in Pennsylvania, so I think we're going to have some results on that race. I know we're all looking at that.
Absolutely.
I did want to mention the turkey trot really quickly. My campaign committee is going to be distributing turkeys. Again, it was a very successful endeavor the last time that we did it, and people wanted us to bring it back. And so we're trying to make it even bigger than it was last time. So for every $50 donated to the campaign committee through November 21st, we will donate one turkey to every family in need. This was something that we worked out with the campaign finance board to make it acceptable for their rules. And so turkeys are expensive this year, but they want a 2x factor. So to show people are actually supporting the campaign committee and not just buying turkey. So that's kind of the way they did it. So for every $50 donated, we will distribute one turkey to a family in the district. Last time we did 75 turkeys. We're hoping to do more this time.
Yeah, what if they're vegan?
Vegan turkey, you might be out of luck.
Well, they have tofurkey. You can't give a family some tofurkey. What's going on, man?
Turkey?
Tofurkey.
Tofurkey.
Yes, that's a thing. Oh my God, that's
Turkey
very
from
discriminatory.
That's a tongue twister right there. Scala likes scallions and scallops. Timid likes turkeys with tofu, tofurkey. What is it? Tofurkey from tofu. How about that? Timid likes tofurkeys from tofu. There you go.
That's discriminatory. They only get turkeys. They can't get.
Hey, listen, it's free. No, in all seriousness, there are a lot of because turkeys are expensive, and they're only getting expensive. There are a lot of families who reach out saying we need help.
Absolutely.
It's a big deal. So to be able to give out turkeys, we're trying to do at least 100 this time. I think it's a good thing, and we obviously spread it around the district based on need. So while supplies last, we will put that word out once we have the turkey. For now, we're trying to raise the funds to get as many as possible out.
Yeah, while supplies last.
That's right.
Yeah. So no, it's helping people in the holidays is always a good thing.
Yeah. And in fact, last year I even got a couple calls from people asking if I was doing it again. And even though it wasn't a big event, last year, we were able to meet those requests that came in because there were some people who were just asking for turkeys, so we were able to get them. But we're trying to do it big again.
Right.
So, Andre has a call. What's up?
So I mean, it was less of a battleground, but at the same time, it is an important seat. Marco Rubio is called against Val Demings.
Marco Rubio called against Val Demings in Florida. Is that board worthy? I guess we can put that on the board. We need something.
70 with 75% of the results are in. He is he's got 55% of the vote. They just called it.
On that.
What is okay? So Marco Rubio, Jesus Christ, why won't this guy just go away?
I don't even know if you could read that, but it said Florida Senate went Republican. That seat.
It just looks like a P.
Oh, it does look like a P.
I see FIA, FL, and the rest is unreadable. Why won't Rubio just go away, man? Just go away. Some of these guys need to just be gone.
Oh, Tim
What?
Ryan is ahead.
Tim Ryan's ahead.
8.1% to 41.8.
Yeah.
This is what I was talking about, son.
Tim Ryan is ahead in Ohio.
That's what I was talking about, son. I called JD Vance, VITCH for the kids out there, and I was correct. Hillbilly LG sucks.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Okay, so Tim Ryan is taking it. Okay.
He hasn't, no, it hasn't been called, but he's ahead.
It hasn't been called, but he's got a big lead.
Okay.
That will be a Democratic pickup.
That'll be a Democratic pickup, so that's interesting.
So what do you think Dems are going to lose big this overall, or you think it's going to be
It
about
doesn't
even?
look like that is the case. I mean, the House is probably going to be gone, right?
I'm more optimistic. I'm more optimistic.
These results look more optimistic than you might have initially thought. Doesn't mean that people should be celebrating either way, but I mean,
Go out and
Right.
vote.
yeah, in New York, you have 55 minutes, by the way, so please vote if you haven't yet.
And in other states as well.
Yeah, anyone
Yeah.
watching this live,
And-
if you haven't voted, if the polls are open, please vote.
Yeah, and it was just because really going into this, at least earlier on, it was expected that the Dems were going to just get wiped clean all the way through this time around. So, it could be kind of a win if it's less of a,
Well, that was a
beating.
pickup. That's what was significant about that was a Republican held seat in the Senate previously.
Yeah.
So for the Democrats to pick one up, that gives them a little bit of a cushion if they lose some.
Right.
Yeah, like Georgia, for example, if Warnock falls, or even if Oz wins Pennsylvania.
But at the same time, it is one of the most underfunded races by the
You're talking about the Vance one?
yeah, the JD Vance against Tim Ryan.
They weren't really putting their money into
Yeah,
that.
the Democrats didn't want to put any money in Ohio. They wanted to keep their stronghold in the races that they had.
And that might be something that needs to be reconsidered from a political strategy standpoint, because you see this a lot, that seat, for example, was Republican held in Ohio, and the Democrats nationally didn't want to put much into it because they looked at it as a Republican seat. And
It
they're
was
like,
an open seat.
it was an open seat and obviously quite winnable. So I think political consultants and political types need to kind of reevaluate the way they think about some of these races. Like,
Hey, not me. I called Ohio. I was talking about Ohio for a minute.
give Andre credit where it's due, but overall, why wasn't money poured into it? I mean, I guess it doesn't seem like maybe he needed it in this case, but I think.
He went on every program possible.
No, but I'm saying he won.
No,
But my point is that he seems to have won in spite of not having that money coming, right? But even so, I think that we need to start looking at these things differently, and just because the incumbent there or the previous official was of a certain party doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. I mean, look at how trends are shaping up. Look at all different factors. Look at who the candidates are. Look at what seats are winnable. It might not be these traditional measurements that we tend to use, like this has been a red seat, or this is a red state or a blue state. Things are very fluid right now.
I mean, might need to change. Looks like the Associated Press has called the governor's race for Beelzebub in Florida.
Okay.
So that sucks.
Ron DeSanctimonious was what Trump had called him.
This dude is so trash.
I guess we have to put this on the board as well.
Yeah,
It
no,
is so-
first off, nobody's getting paid. Dan should have specified that, definitely. So we're paying people out tomorrow, we're paying people out.
So-
That's it's
tomorrow.
trash. Ron DeSantis is a threat. He's one of the threats to democracy, I think, that would have been included in that poll.
So she needs it.
He's a more competent, politically competent Trump, and maybe a little bit more extreme in some areas.
He is a charisma vacuum, though, isn't he?
But does that really matter on that side? Like, as long as you've got the rhetoric, is the charisma
true.
really thing? And I think to be fair on the in that type of assessment, sometimes I think on the liberal or democratic side, the charisma could overweigh substance in some cases.
That's actually a problem probably for the Democrats. And I've talked about this too. That it seems like Democrats want to be inspired by their candidates. The Republicans just want someone who is going to put forth the policy that they're into.
Yeah. So,
Like in the track.
But when you're talking about running for president, I do think that starts to matter a little bit. Like if he's on stage with Trump, he'll probably be outshined by his lack of charisma.
Right. Yeah. And it's not really that Trump has charisma. He just is an attitude that he has. I think people like.
Well, I mean, for better or worse, he's not boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul Trump in the chat says, is Greg Meeks projected to keep his seat? Yes. That's one of the most. Does that answer it, Paul?
I wonder if that laugh is for Meeks.
That was for the question in general.
No, listen, let's, I am hoping all Democrats keep their seats. That is what I can say.
Yeah, it's very interesting that the congressional, because of how the districts are drawn, like the congressional district still is heavily Democratic, even though it contains areas that do vote Republican. Like you're going to see some Zeldin areas in the Meeks district, but it won't be enough to make him lose.
Desantis is called.
Yeah, we have that on the board already. We're ahead of you. Even though I don't think anyone can read it but me. And I'm a lefty, and so my handwriting is not good, and it's glare. We're doing what we can.
Got it. Yeah, let's see what's going on anywhere. Oh, looks like O'Rourke is up in Texas.
O'Rourke is up?
But there's only 15% reporting, so.
Beto is up at 15% reporting. Jeremy in the chat says that the Democrats' narrative sucks. But Jeremy, my question to you is, what should the narrative be?
And also, what's the Republican narrative?
We
won the election?
What is the Republican narrative? Well, it's interesting to me. I mean, and going off of the poll that crime is a top issue, and this was my poll statewide, the economy was number one, but whether it's crime or the economy, because people obviously focus on inflation, it seems like the Republicans' rhetoric is the Democrats screwed that up. I'm not seeing a plan put in place aside from just like, I guess we're going to be tougher on crime, but like how? And is it exclusively bail reform? Is that the entire plan? I mean, is it firing Bragg? I mean, is that it? Like, what exactly is it? How are you going to control the crime rate?
Yeah, I think the playbook with Republicans and crime is always the same. Put more police and lock people up. I think that's generally how their crime plan goes. And a lot of people identify with that because they're like, oh, well, they're criminals. They should be locked up. Oh, we need more police. There's always that idea there, whereas Democrats and others try to look at different factors. You can't just throw more police at stuff. You can't just lock people up forever. It just doesn't.
You need a holistic approach. I mean,
right.
You can't rely on rhetoric and short-term solutions if you're trying to solve the problem. So how are you going to get the crime rate under control in the long run? You can't just lock everybody up who commits a crime, because the system is going to keep repeating. It's like a rinse and repeat type deal. Right. I mean, it's they're going to be more people committing crimes then if the underlying problems that created that situation were not addressed.
Absolutely. And I think that's not sexy to talk about.
Right.
That can be misconstrued by people as being an apologist, or not really not being tough on crime, because you're saying, well, we got to address the issues that cause this, and they're like, yeah,
but we're still saying, by the way, lock people up who should be locked up. We're not saying, like, let's just address the issues and pat people on the head. Like, no, there are dangerous people out there who need to be locked up. But if that's all you're doing, all that's going to happen is there are going to be more people committing crimes, and just going to be stuck in this endless cycle. So to truly be tough on crime, you have to have solutions out there that are going to lower the crime rate.
All right.
And the crime rate isn't lowered simply by putting more people behind bars. Like that's just not the way to solve the problem.
Absolutely.
Well, no, not everyone has learned this, apparently.
Has what?
Andre said we learned this.
No, everyone has.
Look at the way people are voting.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you would think that we know this, but it's not the case. Lixa says jail reform, not bail reform. Now that's a big thing in New York. People are really have a visceral reaction to the bail reform in New York, even though some of the data, as we looked at prior, or the reports, were that the data wasn't showing that it was making a negative difference.
No, 5%.
Well, there was data out there saying that it was kind of too early to have conclusive evidence, and that's why the governor at her debate said that we need to look at this more, and she caught a lot of heat for saying that, because a lot of people just fed up with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there's not a lot of data, I mean, it is prudent that we have to look at it more.
5% in Pennsylvania. Okay, so what's the result so far?
85% of Fetterman, 13.5% to Oz.
That's all early vote reflected in that, though.
Yeah, having said that, he's currently up by 170,000.
Oz is up by 170. No, I mean Fetterman is up by 170,000 votes in Pennsylvania, but that's 5% counted with the early vote. That's really crazy how Republicans are not early voting. It's all Democratic.
But that's such a good sign for a lot of things.
It is a good sign. It's a good sign for Fetterman for sure.
Well, I'd say as long as he can hold on to that, that would be great.
Yo, Pennsylvania might be called tonight.
Pennsylvania could be called tonight.
For which race?
The Pennsylvania Senate race. By the way, I'm sure that Shapiro is up in PA also, right?
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. And still 4% reporting in. Shapiro is got 88.5%. Mastriano 10.2%.
Yeah. Again, those margins will obviously tighten as all the results come in. But the very significant lead, I mean, that's kind of what you have to look at, right? Like you would expect, obviously, the Democrat to jump ahead with the early voting factored in, but you start to look at the margins by which they're ahead and you say, oh, that might be bigger than we thought it might be at this point, which means that once it starts to tighten, it might not tighten as much as we thought.
Yeah, and 4% is very early. 4%. Of course.
But it depends on the seat, right? Because we saw one race earlier called with 0% in. I mean,
oh really?
Yeah. Just depends on projections.
Yeah. Georgia's only at 30% reporting in.
Yeah, and the interesting thing also is that, we look at things like, okay, only 25% is in, so that doesn't tell you anything, but it does tell you a lot. And there are a lot of factors that play in terms of like where it's coming from and the demographics and, enrollment and historical trends in these areas and all kinds of things. But if you think about a poll is typically not that many people. I mean, if you have a poll with 500 people in it, that's a lot of people. And that can be very accurate within a few points, plus or minus, on what a very larger sample would do. So it doesn't take a very large sample to get an accurate number as far as percentages go scientifically. That's why when you look at, for example, our polls that we do, they're not scientific polls, but they tend to be, for better or worse, pretty good in terms of what people are thinking. And there aren't thousands of people voting in there, but it's a trend that does kind of start to identify itself with a relatively small number of people in it. So when you look at these results coming in, a lot of it is going to come down to area, right? Like if you're looking at, for example, okay, early votes, we know that they tend to trend Democratic. If you're looking at votes in major cities, for example, it's going to be more Democratic. In rural areas, it's going to be more Republican. So you look at demographics like that, but it doesn't take a huge sample to get a pretty good idea as to the way it's going.
All right. So what do we got here? Looks like everyone's looking at some of these different races. Maryland looks like it's going to go purple. This is from the chat. I guess people are following as well.
52 to 48.
And for Kemp right now?
No.
For Abrams still. Okay, so Stacy Abrams is still leading in Georgia, 52-48.
Yep. But again, not complete yet.
And so, these trends also do bode well, not to jinx it, but they bode well for New York. Knock on wood. But if you're looking at what's happening nationally, and also if you look at the early voting tallies in New York, so far the data we have, and again, this is way too early, so don't quote me on this, but so far the data that we have does benefit Kathy Hochul in a governor's race.
You're right. Yeah. So, yeah, because I don't know what you're seeing. I'm just still looking at the Google stuff. Nothing there's no data on New York whatsoever.
Because polls haven't closed yet. They close at 9:00.
But are they closed in Georgia?
Yeah, they close earlier in Georgia. Yeah.
Yo, all right, hold on a second. So,
Georgia has issues, by the way, Jay, when it comes to people being able to vote. In case you haven't.
Yeah, very, very much indeed so. But I do want to give this very important update.
Okay, update.
65% of the vote counted in Georgia so far is only early vote. Only 3% of actual election day voting has been counted.
Okay.
Only 3%, even though.
So that's going to really change.
But that's going to favor Kemp.
That's going to favor Kemp highly.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Warnock as well.
And Warnock. No. not Warnock.
No, I'm sorry.
Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
I apologize. That's not at the time.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So if you are looking basically only at the early vote and it's close, that's not a good sign for Democrats.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, people need to get out and vote.
But what about Pennsylvania? That wasn't the case in PA, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming that was exclusively.
No, I think you had like at a higher amount that was in. How much was in?
Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Then Georgia?
What was in Pennsylvania?
5%.
Only 5 in Pennsylvania was in? Oh, no, it's like 15.
No, at 5%, he was still leading by 170,000 votes.
Okay, so that might be all early
That's
votes.
very early
Yeah.
votes. Because their polls just closed at 8:00.
Yeah.
Come on, they need to hold on to that. Yeah, Georgia's got a long fight ahead of them.
By the way, did James in the chat ever explain the replacement for the Metro card system? Because I know he had an issue with it.
I hadn't seen it. It looks like here's. I mean, how can Abrams lose? She's the president of Earth. Like, what's going on? You don't watch Star Trek, so.
No.
Yeah, in the last
Got started in that, was it?
it was the last season of one of the newer series, Star Trek. I forgot the name of it. It takes place in the future, and well, further in the future, and the president of United Earth was guest played by Stacy Abrams.
Playing herself?
Yeah, well, no, she wasn't playing herself, but yeah, I mean, this was hundreds of years in the future, but she was surprised when they were like, "Oh, the president of Earth wants to speak to you," and it comes up on screen. It was Stacy Abrams playing the character. So yeah, I mean, you can't beat the president of United Earth. Come on, let's get
Is
around.
Beto still leading?
Well, let's take a look at Beto. Like, Beto just
He was not favored, neither was Abrams, to be clear.
with 20% reporting, Beto
Ryan
is
was, man. I
He
saw
was
him up in the
not.
polls last time I looked.
Look at any polling.
Am I wrong on this, guys?
You are wrong.
I
was
swore I
the one
read
that
some-
called it.
I know you were talking about JD Vance and Tim Ryan last week, but I could have sworn I saw a poll this past week that had Ryan ahead. Andre thinks he's the only person who calls Tim Ryan in Ohio.
all right. Well, Beto O'Rourke with 21% reporting in is at 53.4%, with Abbott at 45.6. So it's still kind of close, and there's a long way to go.
But say those numbers again. Who's ahead?
Beto is ahead, 53.4%, and Abbott
With
45.6.
what percentage in?
21%.
I would be very, very curious as to how many of the folks in the exit polls, how many folks decided on who to vote for in regards to the response in Uvalde. That is my curiosity for Texas.
Jeff is saying in the chat, polls don't mean anything. They can be misleading. They can give an indicator, but they don't necessarily mean that it's going to turn out that way.
But no, I'm not talking about the polls for who.
He's talking about exit. He's talking about exit polling.
Yeah. No, I'm just talking in general in the chat. I actually
I wouldn't
didn't
say
hear-
polls are meaningless. Polls are actually very meaningful. I think people sometimes read them wrong.
that can be true as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And people lie. Yeah. And then people, you also have to know how to read the polls. I mean, polls, like everything else, have been very politicized. And then if you look at the sample, who was actually polled, sometimes
Right.
you see that certain demographics are oversampled or undersampled, depending on the story they're trying to tell. And then you have things called push polls, where they try to get you to answer a certain way by leading questions. So yeah, polls can be manipulative and manipulated, but I would not say that they're meaningless. I think they're very meaningful. I mean, you just look at all of these races. It's funny. It's like one of those things, what do you call that, confirmation bias? Like where if a poll is wrong on something, you say, look, I told you they're always meaningless. But if the data is reliable, like 99.9% of the time, that says something.
Yeah.
And there's also the margin of error. I mean, it's, people ignore that entirely, right? And that's just because of the headlines that you see, like such and such leading in this race by the poll. But if the margin of error is plus or minus 5% and that person ends up losing by 2%, well, that poll was actually accurate. They were leading, but the poll told you that that number could be plus or minus 5, right? So, you know, it means that it was within the margin of error for them to, you know, for them to win.
And whatever the polls are saying, people need to go out and definitely go out and vote, and get these numbers up, this participation numbers up. Now, I know we did mention pre-show about one of the things going on this year that is kind of an issue is, you know, armed people showing up at polls in various states. And this is just kind of insane to me that, you know, this is what's happening or even allowed to happen. Now, I know we have right to bear arms, but it's clearly an intimidation tactic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a judge, as a couple of places, judges have weighed in. One in Arizona had made people stand at least 75 feet away from drop boxes, not allowed to speak to voters. Some people were told they couldn't openly carry weapons. So it's just kind of crazy that we're this polarized and this divided that people are showing up with it. It's really crazy.
Well, I see an article here from October 26th saying that the Ohio Senate race is tied. I'm telling you, I saw something saying that Ryan was leading recently. I don't think I'm making, was that a dream? I mean, if it was a dream,
it was me saying it.
You didn't say no, but you said he was losing.
And you took it in.
I internalized it?
Yeah, you internalized it so much.
A poll from October, look, dude, October 26th said the race was tied in the polls.
Did you say, where does that say he's leading, man? Shut up.
I saw something like yesterday saying Tim Ryan's ahead in Ohio.
Well, he's leading right now. With
That's what's important.
This is the poll that counts.
That's what's important. You are right, Jay. That's right.
With 20% voting, weighing in. Okay, so speaking to the Metro card issue, James in the chat has responded to your call. He said it's called Omni, OMNY. You can pay by tapping your phone or credit card or smartwatch or an Omni card. So there are no machines right now to put cash on the card, but they're assuming to be coming soon. He got his card a few weeks ago at Duane Reade in Rockaway.
Right.
So it looks like there's going to be I guess everyone's going to have a specific card now. So what about people that just want one ride? They just show up and want to grab a quick ticket and jump on. How does that handle, I wonder?
Yeah, you still need to be able to accommodate those riders.
Right, and not everyone's going to prepay, you know. So
they're trying to integrate. I mean, I guess this is a good thing, right? They're trying to bring New York City into the 21st century. So they're trying to integrate smartphone technology to these things and all, which is good, you know, in a sense, because it makes things more convenient. But you do have to be careful that there are certain people who just don't have access to that kind of technology either, and you can't leave them out. But
right, and
doing the same thing with parking meters. You know, the old-fashioned parking meters where you put the quarters in and everything. They replaced those, and now you can put a credit card. But those card readers are not always reliable. I've got a new debit card, and it always tells me the card's expired. And it's not. It's a brand new card. But they're moving to the apps with that also, where you just punch in your license plate and you pay online. So you would attach your card to the account through the app, and this way you're not scanning at the meter or putting money into the meter. You're just entering it in the app.
I don't think they should take away the cash aspect of it. I mean, it takes away access to a lot of different people. And here in Japan,
but it's going to create logistical issues, right? I mean, because you know that they're moving away from those types of meters.
Right. And then what happens if you don't have a card, you don't have a credit card, you don't have that specific card, you can't park at a meter? Like,
if you have a smartphone, I mean, are you saying that you have to have a smartphone in order to park at a spot in New York City?
And if that's required for participation in society, then is it up to society or the government that's making this rules to subsidize these phones? Like, if you're going to force people to use it,
it's a constitutional issue, right? Like, it's because this is the government saying that,
right?
You can't access a parking spot without a smartphone. Now,
Right.
Yeah, we can have a whole constitutional discussion on that because we start getting to the 14th Amendment, the equal protection clause aspect. I suppose there's an argument that there is a rational basis for what they're doing, and they're not discriminating on the basis of anything facially. I mean, the argument is you're discriminating against people who don't have smartphones, but that's not a protected class in any way. So
Right.
they would only need to meet a rational basis review, and they presumably do have a rational basis for implementing this type of technology. But
Yeah, I
it's
think
something to think about just in terms of the restrictive nature of it.
Yeah, and I think when a smartphone is clocking in at about $400 to $600 and some pushing up to $1,000 for the phone, now we're talking about an economic restriction.
Right. Right.
So,
a regressive policy or aggressive tax even.
right. And so, now here in Japan, some of this stuff, all of this stuff is already implemented in cities like Tokyo and Osaka and major places around pretty much everywhere in the country. So you've long been able, I'm talking 20 years or more, being able to have your prepaid card to jump on the subway, or your phone. You could just tap your phone to do it, even before smartphones. And at the same time, there are machines at the gates where you can go and buy a single ticket to jump on the train. So all of these things are implemented. So that doesn't require someone to buy something in order. I know Licks in the chat says a cheap Android is less than $100, but I mean it still requires someone to buy.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's almost like a tax if you look at it that way. Like you're making someone buy this device just to be able to utilize a public asset or a public accommodation. That doesn't seem fair. And you do run into legal and potentially constitutional issues when you start going down that road.
Yeah. So now I've used both. Recently when I went up to Tokyo, I have a prepaid card that I hadn't used in since the last time I was up there, which was 3 years prior, and it was still money on the card, and I just walked through and tapped my card and went. So that's very useful. It's not difficult to do, but just the option to use.
I heard that she was going to be running. I wasn't following the race, but did you know that Evan McMillan is running for Senate in Utah?
Yeah.
Okay.
As a Democrat too.
Not as a Democrat, as an independent, but with the support of the Democratic Party. Kind of what Bernie Sanders does.
Yeah. Well,
except different.
Except not.
Yeah. No, this is all very interesting. I was just going to say, Jay, when I was in DC taking the DC Metro, they had an interesting system where you could pay with the card. And so for those who don't know, to compare it to New York, I guess, it's kind of a hybrid between the Long Island Railroad and the subway, in that you do have to pay in DC based on how far you're going. So it's not like the New York City subway where it's like one fare and you can just ride it. You have to basically tell it where you're getting on and where you're getting off. So what you do is you use a credit card to buy a ticket, but then if you got off at a place beyond what your ticket was, right, you had to pay what was called an exit fare. The problem was that the exit fare machines only took cash. I guess because they really don't trust you at this point. They're like, you overstayed your welcome, so now we don't trust your card. I don't know. But I always found that to be a bad system, because when you arrive, there are all these machines that take a card. So you think, okay, cool, I'm good with the card. I don't need to carry cash down here. But then if especially someone like me who wasn't really from there, it took me a while to get accustomed to that system. And there were a couple of times when I got off and for whatever reason, I didn't have enough money on my card. They demanded cash. And I was like, oh, I thought I could use a card here, but no, not for the exit fare. So why is it that the entrance fare takes a card, but the exit fare only takes cash?
Yeah.
A lot of issues, man. Like even, I can go on for days. Like, and James, I'm sure, and others can do it better than me. But the New York City ferry, right? It's under the purview of the EDC. Subway is the MTA, but so what? Why can't you use a Metro card to get on the ferry? Like, why can't we integrate these technologies?
Right.
Why transfer from one to the other?
Right. They should be integrated.
Yeah.
Especially if they're city functions. But I don't know about, like, here there are two systems in Tokyo. two metro systems. One that's more somewhat MTA like, and there's another one that's owned by a different company. And so I don't think they are specifically integrated in that way either. But they should be, I think. I mean, I don't, I did want to say we are coming up on probably about an hour and a half here, which is quite long here. So we want to just do a check with, reach us, subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and hit us up if you want to participate in the conversation. Leave your comments on YouTube.
New York.
Absolutely. We can keep going here, but I want to at least do a round out for the podcast portion of it. Do you want to drop a bottom line?
The bottom line. I wish someone in the chat can give us a bottom line. Maybe we can read a good bottom line, since we've had myself give one and you give one before.
Right.
We could do something a little bit different this time. And we appreciate everyone who joins us every week in the chat. And for those who are just stopping by this week. What is the bottom line? I see Anthony Sambroni on here. So
also,
some of these viewers.
While we're waiting for the bottom line for someone in the chat, we do have an Instagram account now. So if you go to Instagram and go to Nuance Show, go there, give us a follow. We'll be posting up some of these clips on there as well. And I'll drop that link in the chat also. So getting a little fancy.
Got a notification. Nuance Show is now following. I was like, look at this. Fancy.
Yeah, check that out. So let me see if I can find how do you just pull the link right from Instagram? There's no easy way to just pull the account link. Like, you can share posts and stuff. There's no thing that just says here, this is the account link.
So any bottom lines in the chat? Don't be shy now. What is the bottom line? Let's see. Yeah, Luck joining us.
And I think these conversations, these discussions are productive and useful. Even having everyone gather and have this think about these things in different ways and
yeah, absolutely. And that's what we try to do. We try to look at things from different perspectives on here. That's why we call it nuance. So sometimes we're just throwing these ideas and thoughts out that it could be us playing devil's advocate or really just examining things from the other side, because even as a lawyer, that's what I'm trained to do, right? Like, you want to figure out what the other people are thinking, because I think it's useful in many ways. Number one, it's just good to know, to kind of be interconnected with people and just know what people are thinking, who might not agree with you on everything. In fact, you should be around people who don't agree with you on everything, because that's how you kind of get that balanced conversation and these balanced ideas. But also from a political standpoint, or even like a legal standpoint, or whatever you're doing strategically, if you want your side to prevail, you have to understand what the other side is really saying to be able to argue against it. Otherwise, you're just talking past each other, which is happening too much nowadays. People, it's like, how can you even have an argument on what policy should be if we can't even start with the same set of facts or principles? Like, I understand philosophies are going to be different, and ideas, people can be thinking about things in different ways, but we should be grounded the same way. We should all be living in the same reality. And when we can't even get that, it makes things impossible.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the bottom line.
I wasn't trying to do that, Jay. Did I inadvertently give the bottom line? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Come on, Lixa. Come on, James. Somebody give us a good bottom line.
Lixa posted bottom line. Everyone should be like California and send a booklet on every candidate. We need informed voters. Okay, informed vote. We need informed voters is definitely.
Yeah, New York does that too, though. You get that from the campaign finance board.
Okay.
You voted in California before?
No, I'm saying, what was the last time anybody voted for California? Like, the amount of ballot proposals they have every year.
The ballot proposals are crazy in California. There's a lot.
The bureaucracy in California.
Recall elections.
Forget about
So I'm up to keep going. I think again, round out the podcast. Everyone
Yeah.
join us next week, and thank you for listening and subscribing. If you are up for the video and want to see our handsome mugs, check out the YouTube channel. Hit us up on Instagram as well.